Hey, folks, welcome to Insights in Action, where some of the world's best startup operators share moments of real insight and real impact. I'm your host, Bobby Pinero, and in today's episode, we've got one of my all-time favorite people joining us. His name is Ray Ko. Ray is probably one of the most important people in Silicon Valley that you've never heard of. He loves to fly under the radar. He first worked for Jeff Weiner at Yahoo, where he built out one of Silicon Valley's first business operations teams. He then went on to work for Chamath Palihapitiya at Facebook, building out growth and analytics there. And since then, he's been a partner at Social Capital, where he's helped countless startups, including Intercom, build and scale growth and analytics teams. In this episode, we discuss one of Ray's core theses, that real growth starts with playing great defense. Ray drops some real wisdom. Excited? Let's jump in. I'm really excited to get into this concept of kind of playing defense. Obviously, we know in sports, defense wins championships. So yeah, let's get into it. Tell me a little bit more about it, Ray.
Today's world, when people talk about growth, there's a huge bias on growth hacks, right? Incremental features or non-obvious new things that you apply to your users that somehow helps you scale the business dramatically. And everyone talks about all these incremental experiments and features and building things quickly. And there's a huge kind of bias towards that when people talk about growth. And the thing that I think is just as important, if not more, is what we call defense. And you alluded to, it's like, defense wins championships. And, in a sporting context, you have to play both amazing offense and defense. But what people don't talk about enough in growth, and what I'd argue, to be honest, like how growth teams should be organized is, there should be someone that leads offense and incremental ideas and features and hacks, but there should be also someone that leads defense, which is how do we make sure that the systems that we've built, especially the things that drive our growth, how do we treat them like utilities, making sure they're always on, they're always working the way they should be? And because I think people take for granted, and people essentially, most teams and most kind of companies I work with, they will spend time and celebrate the launch of something and the positive results from a test. And once that's pushed, to all of a customer user base, generally teams walk away and move on to the next thing. And I think there should, be a muscle built. And, I think what separates the good and great teams are the great teams have built this muscle around defense, how to make sure that we are, the things that the things that we've built and the impact that they've had continue to persist, I think that's just a concept that hasn't been talked about enough in terms of growth. But when you talk to the most amazing kind of companies and the underlying growth teams, they'll tell you about these kind of war stories when there was a huge slowdown or when this thing broke. And those are kind of 5-alarm fires at the time, but the artifact of those events are that these teams learn really deeply about their systems, and they learn deeply about how to basically fix things that were broken, but also they surface opportunities on how we, monitor those things kind of going forward. And it's a real powerful thing. And instead of just thinking about growth in terms of incremental, how do we keep growing 2% a week or whatever X% a week? How do we make sure that we prevent that from going to 1% or 0 or negative? And I think that's, what I call playing kind of good defense.
And are there any examples from your days, either at Facebook or Yahoo, or even some of the companies that you advised, where you felt like, playing some good defense either prevented a slowdown of growth, or even, in sports, people talk about all the time, good defense leads to good offense. Any examples in kind of, in that way?
We all have our core flows and funnels and features. And, one of the things that, we did at Facebook, I think if you were to turn back the clock, when this was like pre-mobile days, even when you signed up as a new user at Facebook, you hit, put in your information, and you hit, register or sign up, and we'd send you a confirmation email. And so your account actually wasn't confirmed until you would go into your email inbox and hit confirm my email. And we wouldn't actually count you as a new user until you did that. And so we had, this kind of thing called account creation, which is all the people that hit the sign up button, and then account confirmations, which is all the new users that would hit that, open their inbox and confirm their account and verify their email address. Once we saw a huge growth slowdown in active users, we're like, oh crap, what's happening, right? And at the time, I think we benefited from understanding the kind of change in the active user number. It was new users, plus, resurrections, which are, users that were previously stale, minus, users that have churned. And so we saw that new confirmed users was down, and we're like, what's going on? And, we went through all these analyses. Was it a country that was driving it down? Was it, a certain source, users from search engines, we basically had to go through all this manual analyses, right? After detecting that anomaly. And what we found was the emails that were getting sent, the confirmation emails that were supposed to be getting sent, weren't getting sent. Well, what was happening? We were being throttled by, I forgot which specific email provider. Let's just call it like Gmail or Hotmail. We were getting throttled, and a lot of the emails that were supposed to be getting sent weren't getting sent. And that took weeks to figure out, right? And when we figured that out, we basically, not only fixed the problem within, the product as far as how we prevent that throttling, but also had introduced kind of conversations with those providers like, hey, how do we prevent this from happening again, so that you guys will kind of push through these confirmation emails. And so that's a long way of saying, after that, from that point on, we were able to basically, hone in on this important part of the flow that we really took for granted before, right? Like we kind of just assumed, hey, once a user, signs up, that confirmation email should just get sent, right? And, we didn't understand how important that was until we saw this really massive slowdown, right? And going forward, what started as this, this kind of loosey-goosey proxy of active users, growth kind of slowing down, now we're able to diagnose something like that very quickly because we went through that, rigmarole of like, oh, it's confirmation email is not getting sent. It's because Gmail or Hotmail are throttling us. And, and now we were able to basically identify and fix, a problem like that very quickly. And that kind of goes to the second piece that you kind of brought up, which is, okay, now that we're going to be able to play defense, which is like, we know this flow and how it works and how important it is to our growth. And let's make sure that's continuing to work the way it works. How do you turn that into offense? Well, we realized how important confirmation was to our growth. So we said, hey, let's play with confirmation. What else why else is there a gap between people creating an account and people confirming an account? It was basically like a 20% gap. So all these people were creating accounts, but weren't confirming their account. And you can't use Facebook until you confirm your account. And we said, let's inspect confirmation again. And what we realized was, through a bunch of analysis was, holy shit, people are misspelling their email address. They're saying Bobby at, hotmail.com or Bobby at gmale.com. And you're looking at this and so we're like, wow, that's maybe one reason why people are confirming. We're sending it to the wrong address. And, we're basically only asking you to type in your email address once. And naturally, when you're adding, hundreds of thousands of users a day, there's going to be errors. And so we basically, spend a lot of time to reimagine the confirmation process so that we guarantee that, for example, you'd give us an accurate email address. So we did things like adding a second field to confirm your email address, or doing type ahead when you're typing in Gmail, Hotmail, Yahoo, or whatever kind of popular email provider was. But we would have never gotten there had we not known how important confirmation was, right? And other teams that maybe don't focus on this area would basically see a growth slowdown and maybe instead of saying, hey, what was the root cause of that? Let's just try to find a new hack or new feature to restart that growth. Meanwhile, you had this really easy fix to basically continue the growth that you've already seen. And so it's a long story of just like but a microcosm of dozens of times when we saw slowdown, but that slowdown, once we fixed it, taught us how to play defense. And it's just something that's not talked about enough in the Valley.
I'm just imagining a growth product manager coming into a growth meeting cold, saying, "Hey guys, I know exactly what we need to do to grow Facebook. Confirmation emails."
Exactly. I have the panacea.
Exactly.
Well, and that's the thing. It's not sexy. No one you're not gonna recruit an engineer or a growth PM saying, you know what, fuck features. Here's what I want you to do. Maintain the stuff we launched. Ooh.
Totally. No, but
you're not going to get someone to sign up, but it's just as important. And and as you've probably went through this a myriad of times at Intercom. it's really important to get right, because there's all these really positive second order effects. When you play defense well, it's because you know your system at an acute level in a distributed way. It's not just one person that knows the system. All these people kind of understand because they've gone through the kind of pain and the brain damage of something not working the way they think it should be working, and they have to go fix it. So it's just really important, and that's why companies like Intercom and Facebook become the companies they became, not because of all these amazing features and flows that they built. It was also because they had teams that were paranoid about the quality of the product they built and making sure that it was working.
Totally. One of the other things that I always think about, and I always thought about this in relation to kind of Intercom's growth, was like, and this is an extreme example, right? But like if your conversion rate goes down by 50% and you don't know what it is, well, guess what? You need to come up with something that doubles your conversion rate just to get back to where you were.
Exactly.
And obviously, that's an extreme example, but you lose 5%, you need to overcome it, not by growing 5% by 7% or 8%, whatever the math ends up being there.
Right. Yeah. And then if you're basically, avoiding the shit that you caused, you're building shit on top of shit sometimes.
Exactly. One of the things that you mentioned that I want to dig into a little bit more is, and because I'm curious on just like how you advise companies to actually play defense. And one of the interesting things you said was having somebody whose responsibility it is to play offense and whose responsibility it is to play defense. How do you think about that? Like, is whose responsibility is it to play defense? How do you think about kind of structuring the team in that way? How do early stage companies actually implement this defense?
Just like everyone is responsible for generating and executing on an amazing kind of idea, everyone should be responsible for playing defense. And the way we did it at Facebook, I give a lot of credit to the team there. Namely Naomi, who led product, and Javi and Alex, and James Wang, who led engineering, and Chamath. I think one of the things that we did right was we set up what we called basically an on-call rotation. And what is that? There was 1 or 2 engineers every 2 weeks that were basically responsible for being on call. And the reason we created was we went through enough, brain damage and heartache of things breaking, having to fix it, but learning a lot, that we're like, we need someone basically on call. And when things break in the middle of the night, we need someone to not only identify and diagnose it, but fix it. And the interesting, artifact of that was it created a lot of accountability across the entire engineering team, because basically like every single engineer had to go through on call. And it was not something they look forward to. There was a joke that, every, male or female engineer, regardless of, when you did it, you develop what we call the on-call beard, because you're up 24/7, you're getting pinged, and we set up all these systems and alerts to detect anomalies. And there were false alarms, but it built a muscle across every single engineer that, this is how this system works. This is how, Facebook was built on top of, a lot of APIs that we build ourselves, right? Like into other email address books, and as an example, and, a lot of software today, neobanks, a lot of social apps, certain SaaS, software like Intercom, they're built on top of APIs to other, data stores. And so that was a big part of how Facebook specifically, built our user base. And during this on-call kind of rotation, we had to monitor all those, times that we had to call other pieces of software or where data lived in other places. And so this rotation created this accountability, but also this distributed expertise across all the engineers. And so, that was like a really good foundational kind of muscle that we built. And so that's one way I advise, our companies to play defense, which is like have some version of an on-call system, right? It may, even when you have, single digit number of employees, that muscle, the earlier you build that, the better you're going to be, because that compounds over time, right? Because the set of people that went through that initially are going to, especially when you do fix something that's really important, you're going to want to convey that to the next set of people that join this company, because you realize how impactful it is when you fix something, and you see the number kind of grow, go back up to where it used to be. And so on-call rotations were really good. And I think I went through this in my example, which is you almost want to go through these slowdowns. And when I tell these, I advise these companies, obviously when we invest, the company's kind of working already, and, they're at some level of scale. Everyone's kind of like, doing victory laps with how fast they're growing and all this kind of stuff. And I tell them, yeah, you're going to hit a slowdown, and, and it may be in something that's a really important core metric, or it might be something that's just a really important kind of engagement flow or funnel inside of your product, but you're going to hit that at some point. And it's a good expect it, but it's a good thing for it to happen, because what it's going to do is, instead of just having this, theater of dashboard, charts inside of your dashboard to just make you look like your system, I think the best teams go through these slowdowns and they build their dashboards based on what they learned about something that broke, and when they fixed it, like to the example that I talked about earlier. Now all of a sudden we literally have confirmations by email source at Facebook at the time, after we learned like how important confirmations were. So we had these real-time chart literally of confirmations from Hotmail, Gmail, and we set up some way to detect anomalies, week over week, month over month, day over day kind of stuff. So the first thing I talked about was on-call rotation, but the second thing that I do when I talk to the teams that we advise, which is you have dashboards, and before you've hit a slowdown, they're probably basically useless because they just give you counting kind of numbers. But once you kind of go through some of these slowdowns, those dashboards become really, really important, because you went through this process of figuring out what's important in some of these charts and graphs. And when something does slow down or something does seem amiss, the general team's going to be able to diagnose in a very quick way what's going on, where and why. And so you go from like hand wavy proxies of something, right, that might be broken or something that you're thinking, hey, it doesn't seem to be working, to specific root causes. And that's huge, right? And going through these kind of fires, basically go from, instead of taking a week to fix something and trying to figure out what it is, building that muscle allows you to identify that root cause in minutes, and having this on-call rotation really enables that. And so and so I think that's definitely something that we emphasize, and you see the team. Not all teams will take to it, but the teams that do, those are the teams that really are able to build a durable kind of product and business.
That I'm just nodding my head along, because both of those points resonate so deeply from my experience at Intercom. I mean, I remember we had one of the most impactful things that we did was we had alerting set up through, we obviously, our business was not as high velocity as Facebook's. It's still a high velocity business, but we didn't necessarily need people up at midnight to fix things, but we had alerting, right, for every step in our funnel. And when one of our conversion rates was off by, I think we did it like 2 standard deviations from the normal, we would send everybody an email and say, hey, something's up, something's wrong. And we'd all start digging in. Did this email conversion thing break? Did this collector break? Did this step break? An importer broke? What happened? And it just, or did some instrumentation break, which is also, it's less bad, but also bad. And so you jump on these things immediately.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I remember you guys had this daily email, and I think we some of the alerts, and I was on there, and it was great. I was like, every company should have this that we work with. And, I could tell because like Owen was on it, and he would reply all, like, why did this thing go down? Jeff Weiner did something similar at Yahoo Search, right? And, it just showed that when, like an Owen or Jeff Weiner, they were playing defense by like, reading these alerts and these daily kind of like emails on metrics, like everyone should, and everyone needs to understand the system. And yeah, I remember like how thorough you guys were in doing some of these things.
Yeah, I appreciate it. And then, I mean, a lot of that was, your input and your support. And then the second point around just like when your business actually does slow down, that can be a blessing in that it makes you really dig in and kind of figure out. For us, at least, there were times where things would slow down and you'd either have to dig in and figure out, okay, did something break or did something change? Or, hey, are we learning something from a macro perspective about the market, the environment? Are there pockets in our business that are doing better than others? Are there places where we should be investing more than other places? Should we be shifting our priorities and focus? And so, some of the slowdowns that we had, I mean, no business is like, very few businesses are just direct up and to the right. Some of those slowdowns can be just the slowdowns to then speed up again, where you find some opportunities that you can then kind of really invest and pour fuel behind.
Yeah, absolutely. And you're absolutely right. Those sometimes like that's where you find where the opportunities are. And, and people, I think, don't just spend enough time building that muscle, right? And I think the best teams will take advantage of these slowdowns. Like, some of my best memories from Facebook are when we kind of came to, we would, have these fires and we'd come together and try to figure out how to fix it. Cause every second, every minute, every day is really important to us. And having that mentality was great. And it also created all these, kind of downstream opportunities for us. I think what we should do now is like, there's all these titles, head of growth. Everyone thinks it's like, and it's always a product manager. We need to, like have like two separate names, one for offense, one for defense. The same way football has an offensive coordinator and defensive coordinator. Like we'll start it here. Like, we'll just say this was, this was when too bad I can't coin the term now, but
well, you started biz ops, you started growth teams. Now we're gonna go offensive coordinators and defensive coordinators.
Yeah, we'll call it the minister of defense. Something. I don't know, man. I'm not good at names.
No, I love it. Right.
I bet if I'm gonna like it's eventually some teams, there's gonna be one company that does it. Just like when Chamath, when the growth team had some success, I forgot what it was like year one or in the middle, year 1 and 2. He was basically like every company in the Valley will have a growth team, and we're like, shut up. Like, and guess what? Every single company in the Valley has a growth team, and and so. There will be ministers of defense everywhere. And
you heard it here first. Ray, this was really fun. I really appreciate it. Thank you for taking the time. Thanks for sharing your wisdom with us. I'm honestly like really fired up. I want to jump back into some funnels and playing some defense and pulling apart funnels because it's fun, it's rewarding, and it's really impactful work. So thanks for sharing your ideas with us today.
Absolutely.